Hello everyone, welcome to our talk. This is Hancheng from Stanford University. Today, on behalf of all authors, I'm happy to share with you our work breaking out of the Ivory Tower, a large-scale analysis of patent citations to HCI research. HCI research generates significant number of functional prototypes and design implications over time. But does HCI contribute to technological inventions and products, or do our community's insights get ignored by industry? In this paper, we aim to provide the first step towards quantifying the industrial impacts of HCI research. Understanding the relationship between research and practice in HCI has long been a focal subject in our community's research papers as well as conference panels. However, literature so far remains unclear. One line of work primarily focuses on translational barriers, whereas another line of work argues for the considerable industry impacts of HCI research. While prior work has developed rich, in-depth evidence through interviews and personal experience, the lab's broader pattern investigation into how HCI research are making impacts on industry. There are many forms of industry impacts and potential pathways in HCI. For instance, design contributions could lead to process improvements. Technical contributions could lead to patents. Behavior contributions could lead to policy. And there are many other forms as well. In this work, we focused on one of the most important pathways, from HCI research to patent. Inspired by innovation literature in social science, here we quantify one form of industrial impacts of HCI by analyzing how patents refer to HCI research. Patent is a valuable proxy of industry impact, often a necessary but not sufficient step towards actual usage. In patents, inventors are obliged to disclose and cite any prior art, including both prior patent and research related to their inventions. Missing references could lead to potential legal issues and thus are very carefully reviewed and added by patent examiners. Patent citations to scientific papers have been widely used and well established in literature as the proxy of industry impact of research. The approach has been validated in various ways. For instance, prior works have surveyed many inventors and finding patent citations to science are indeed important linkages to science, despite potential errors of over and under inclusion. Here is one of the most important and well-cited patents from Apple: mode-based graphical user interfaces for touch-sensitive input devices. When we look at the prior art this patent cite, we could see several Kai and Whist papers from the 1990s and early 2000s, which this patent builds upon. Building on such approach, we asked the following research questions with regard to industry impacts of HCI research. First of all, what is the impact of HCI research on patents? How much HCI research is cited in patents? Secondly, when is the impact of HCI research on patents? How long does that impact take? Thirdly, where is the impact of HCI research on patents? Which topics of research are especially likely or unlikely to diffuse? We have also included a number of additional results in our paper, which we encourage you to check them out. In our analysis, we primarily leverage a disambiguated citation data from US patent to research papers in Microsoft Academic Graph, from prior works in innovation literature. We complement the dataset with patent metadata from USPTO, as well as paper metadata from Microsoft Academic Graph and Semantic Scholar. Our main analysis considers 4 influential HCI venues, which is Kai, CSCW, Whist, and Ubicom, which in total includes around 70,000 patent citations to HCI research. We also analyzed a dataset that includes 20 SIGCHI-sponsored venues to assess broader footprints of HCI research. First, we show that there is a high proportion of HCI papers that get cited by patents. Overall, 13% of papers in HCI sponsored venues are cited by patents. To put that into context, the proportion is far greater than science overall, which is 1.5%, and biomedicine in general, which is 7.7%. We further show that over 20% of papers from HCI, CSCW, WIST, and Yujie are cited by patents. When investigating the temporal patents, over 60 to 80% of papers at WIST over time are cited by patents, which are shown by the figures on the right-hand side. Again, to put that into context, this proportion is far greater than premier venues in science, such as Science, Nature, PNAS overall, which is 9.7%, and it's higher than natural language processing, which is 11%, and nearly on par with computer vision, which is 25%. We measure NLP and computer vision with premier venues in their field as well. You may be wondering if our conclusion still holds true if we focus only on research citations in patents that are truly central to the patents. To enable such analysis, we leverage the difference between front-page citations and in-text citations in patents. Front-page citations are legally binding and tend to be carefully reviewed and sometimes added by patent attorneys and examiners. Instead, in-text citations capture the scientific articles upon which the scientists and inventors truly relied upon for inspirations, as they tend to be supplied by inventors themselves. We find over 4% of papers in our chosen 4 venues have been cited in text by patents, whereas the proportion of patent in-text citation to science is 2.3% for HCI sponsored venues and 1.4% for science overall. Again, this analysis is showing HCI research has indeed a significant impact on patents. We further demonstrate that highly cited papers in academia are more likely to be recognized by patents in HCI. Here is the table of the most patent-cited HCI papers. You may find many of them quite familiar. Moreover, we demonstrate the time lag between a patent and the HCI papers the patent cited is long, which average at 10.5 years and is getting longer. We also find that HCI research seems to have moved on by the time a paper receives patent attention, as measured by the time point that the paper receives peak academic citation in a year and the time point that the paper gets first patent citation. All of this is suggesting that HCI research and practice may not be efficiently connected. We further leverage topic modeling to investigate the difference between patent-cited papers, non-patent-cited papers, and patents, finding that system interaction has dominated the topic of patent-cited HCI papers over time. To sum up, our work is demonstrating that HCI research has considerable impacts on patent inventions, yet the recognition takes a long period of time corresponding to the long nose of innovation theory, and the lag is getting even longer over time. Our work demonstrates the possibility of quantifying impact signals such as patent relevance to study impacts of HCI research beyond academia. Of course, again, it is important to note that patent is only one proxy of industry impacts. There are many other pathways towards industry impacts which should be addressed in future work. Thank you so much for your interest in our work. Feel free to check out our paper and let us know if you have any questions or feedbacks.